Before we get started, I want to let you know that this lesson turned into a full hour-long journey that I didn't necessarily expect. So I'm going to post a good portion of the video here on YouTube, and if you'd like to continue with the lesson, I'm going to put a link below that I would invite you to follow, and it's going to take you to a checkout page. But you can pay what you wish there. That can be $0 or whatever else you think is fair. Thanks so much. Let's get started. Hey Vin, when you wrote to me about Stablemates, you said that you had a hard time connecting bass lines and making them sound logical, and that when you were trying to solo, you had a hard time sort of saying something on the tune. And I completely understand. I was absolutely there with this tune that I've played many times and learned new things about, which I'll share with you. I was there, and in some ways I'm still dealing with this challenging tune. In fact, preparing for this video for you, I not only discovered new things, but really had to confront some holes in my own sort of playing. The good news is that you can absolutely be able to increase your ability on this tune with some basic knowledge that isn't hard to grasp. And so there's power in that. So you will be empowered to be able to play this tune much better going forward. This is going to be a long video, so be sure to save it for the future because you want to come back to it. There's a lot of stuff in here, and I'm going to kind of try to fit it all in without going too long. The first thing we have to take into consideration when we're working with any tune is to think about the melody and play it if we can. This tune, Stablemates, is not hard to play on the bass, especially in the lower register. I mean, if you play, you just play it here, everything lays pretty well. And I would really recommend checking it out, both so that you have this experience with the melody, but also to consider what notes in the melody affect the harmony. And that will come later in what we're going to talk about today. The next thing has to do with, of course, really absorbing and understanding the form. This is an ABA, or some people list it as ABC form, but the A's are 14 measures long. So that makes for a very sort of odd thing. And there are hits that some people play from the original or a respected recording called the Philadelphians from Benny Golson, who's the composer of this tune. And there's also oftentimes, almost always, part of the tune is done with a Latin feel in the end of the A section. So those are important things to know, and really make sure that you really can feel the form before you try to say anything with your bass line or with your solo. The next thing that we need to do is really master this harmony. And there are some steps that I want to take you through that I think should hopefully help and simplify things. One important thing I want you to consider when working with a complicated tune is to try our best to find the important moments in the tune and also to reduce the harmony as much as possible to its skeleton so that we understand where the sort of harmonic movement of the tune is. All this stuff that's in the A section really leads very simply at its most basic core to the one chord. This is played in D flat. It leads to the one chord and then to the 4 chord and then to the 1 chord again. That's all the A sections are ultimately. There's just lots of things that get us there. What I want to do is think about those moments when we get to the D flat in bar 3. Think of that as an arrival. And then think of that next bar, C7, as a transition, or as if you're changing planes. So if you were to begin the tune taking off on a plane, you're going to land in D flat and then change planes at the C7. And then we have another another departure that starts on the A flat minor 7 and arrives on the G flat. So that's another arrival. Then you're going to change planes again, and then we have a longer trip, a longer route that gets us back to the arrival of D flat. So knowing where those moments of rest are, so to speak, or where those moments of arrival are, can give you some information as to how you structure what you're going to do and where the important moments really are. If we reduce these chords that exist, that are written like in the real book, down to these core elements, and we just look at the movement of the plane, so to speak, as the dominant function, it wants to go somewhere. If we look at that as the plane traveling and the arrivals, these major chords, as the airport you're arriving at, and just sort of lay out that route, we really start, the first two bars are really just a dominant chord. Remember, you can subtract 2s from 2 5s. You can subtract that 2 minor 7 completely. And the first bar, we'll get there, but essentially this is all, as I say, this dominant movement going to the 1 chord. And the same for the next 4 bars. It's the dominant sound, this D flat 7, is the plane that is arriving at G flat 7. And then we are changing planes again, and now it's a bigger, just A flat 7 sound, dominant 7 sound, again arriving at the 1 sound. In the B section, it's a little bit weird, especially these first 4 bars. But I could make a case for really reducing it to really sort of thinking either F minor 7 and some kind of movement, or F minor 7 to G7 in bar 3, possibly. But those G flat 7s and the C7 as well, they sort of circle around the F minor sound. Those are little jumps on the plane. And then the last 4 bars of the A section, it looks really complicated. I mean, it's the descending chromatic thing, B7, B flat 7, A7, A flat 7. But using tritone substitutions, thinking of that B7 instead as F7, we start to see that that's really just a big, essentially 3-6-2-5, which is really just a big 5-7. So the last 4 bars are just a 5 that goes back to the 1 chord, except it doesn't. It starts in the 5 again in the last A. So really sort of cutting out the extraneous stuff can help us to really internalize this tune. And what I would recommend is that you make sure that you've got the ability to play the arpeggios along every step of this way, along every step of the way, as we sort of build on adding more of the chords that are in the tune. So when we're looking at this most basic harmonic reduction, we want to make sure that we can play these basic 4-part chords in their entirety and with a lot of confidence. It's really important in all this instance that you truly feel confident about what these chords are, what notes make them up. And that is going to take a lot of repetition, a lot of thinking, a lot of practice. Don't take it all at once. Take sections at a time. Take the first 4 bars, go to the next 4 bars, and so on. But you really want to put them in other registers, play them up and down, play them in different inversions. That means a different starting note, but the same notes that are in the chord. But instead of starting on the root, start on the 3rd, and so on and so forth. You want to really, truly be able to do this. Sing them, and on and on and on. This is, in my estimation, getting this sound in your ear is going to be really the keystone in holding up all kinds of improvisation on any tune. I won't play through these particular arpeggios right now because I feel this is very doable for you. But what I want to do though is step up to another little level of complexity. In our next harmonic reduction example, we've retained, still cutting out a lot of chords, but we've added some important moments like those changing planes things that I talked about. We now respect those a little bit more. Importantly, that first chord, now I'm making as A7. Remember, the written chord, the written changes there, which we'll talk about in a second, are E minor 7, A7. I'm taking away the E minor 7, and A7 functions completely logically and strong there by itself. So A7 and now A flat 7 going to D flat 7. Remember that A7 to A flat 7 is still just functionally just like an A flat 7. It's just gussied up. And so we've added a little bit more of the harmony in here. And again, we want to take it to a level where we are able to play these arpeggios. You'll notice in this sort of level 2 of the arpeggios, when I play along, things don't sound exactly right, and we're going to get there. And also, I've introduced more chords, but it may seem a little bit confusing as to where or why they are. If we look at bar 9, I am calling these first two bars essentially B flat 7 because I'm giving more emphasis to the dominant chords that occur in these 4 bars, bars 9, 10, 11, 12. 9, 10, 11, 12, this way. I'm giving more emphasis to the dominant chords that are there. So that B flat 7 is going to slightly change in the next little level. And I also want to bring your attention to that the A flat 7 and then A flat 7 sharp 5. That sharp 5 is important. It is necessary to play it. It is part of the melody there. I'm saying it's necessary to take it into consideration. It should not be done away with when we're really trying to get inside this tune. So there's a distinction between A flat 7, which is A flat, C, E flat, and G flat, and A flat 7 sharp 5. A flat is the 1, C is the 3rd, E natural, so E flat taken up a half step, sharped, E flat becomes E natural, and G flat. So those are important distinctions there. And so too, there is the C7 sharp 5 in the form, G7 sharp 5. We need to take those into account. Let's now look at level 3, so to speak, where I'm just adding a couple more chords. And this has to do with trying to sort of bring your attention again to the fact, because it is really, to me, critical to understand that in bars 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, this is really just a big 3, 6, 2, 5 going to D flat. So F is note 3 of D flat major, B flat is note 6 of D flat major, E flat is 2, A flat is 5. 3, 6, 2, 5. The chord qualities are important, but you can think of both things at once, that we need to respect those chord qualities, but we can also see it all as this ornamented progression that is really just a 5 chord. We're just adding a bunch of stuff to the 5 chord that's getting us back to D flat. And so we should be able to play the arpeggios on this as well, of course. So when I'm thinking of these first 4 bars, A7, A flat 7, D flat major 7, C7 sharp 5, I should be able to, this A7, from sort of any of the notes that are available, up, all those notes should sort of immediately light up for us. That's how much we should be familiar with it. A flat 7. Oops, not just playing the arpeggio there. D flat major 7. All those things immediately possible. Remember that this sharp 5 needs to be taken into consideration when it exists. So that may be a place that doesn't feel completely comfortable for you. Target that first. Whatever your shortcoming is, once you sort of figure out fingerings for these kinds of arpeggios, target your shortcoming first and focus on that. Don't spend time on things you already know to make your practice more efficient. Remember, this sharp 5 is just, it's root, third, sharp 5, usually flat 7, although you can have a major 7 sharp 5 as we talked about in other videos. For a dominant 7 sharp 5, that means root, natural third, whatever the fifth is, you go up a half step, and then there's a flat 7 as well. So a C7 sharp 5, C, E is the third, G would be the normal fifth. We're going to go up a half step to G sharp, and then flat 7 is B flat. E, G sharp, B flat, C, E, G sharp, B flat, C, E. So really spend some time making sure that you understand dominant 7 sharp 5 when we're dealing with this tune. What I've done and what I'm sort of calling level 4 is to have the same idea of just playing the arpeggios, not adding more chords, but what I'm trying to do is use voice leading or close connections from where you were to where you're going. And so when there is, from the note that you were on at the end of a bar and the chord changes in the next bar, I want us to be able to find the closest note from the next arpeggio. So for example, in the first 4 bars, A7 is A, C sharp, E, G, right? In A flat 7, the 2 closest notes to G are half step up or half step down. A flat, that's G to A flat, that's the root of A flat 7, or G flat, so G to G flat, that's the flat 7 of A flat. So what I've chosen here is to go to the root, which then gives us a different sort of pattern going down. So A7, and then I'm choosing A flat as the next note I'm choosing, going down, A flat, G flat, E flat, C. And that leads very logically, right? Because our next chord is D flat major 7. I'm on C natural here. D flat is immediately next to it. I could stay on C, but I'm gonna play now D flat. It's just a half step away. Now, I've ended on C for the D flat major 7. Again, I could play C again because the chord is C7 sharp 5, but for a little bit of interest, the next chord tone that's available is 1 full step away, down is B flat, C to B flat. So B flat, and remember our C dominant 7 sharp 5, it has the G sharp, E natural, C. Then the next chord that I'm doing is a D flat 7. Again, I'm right next to the D flat because I'm ending on C. So here's D flat, 1, 3, 5, flat 7, C flat or B natural. That's 2 bars, so I go up and down. Now I've got to, now I'm right next to the G flat, which is the next chord. What I've also done on this part of the PDF is to clearly indicate where the thirds and sevenths are, but I didn't label them as flat 7 or natural 7. It's just, I'm just calling them thirds and sevenths. You should be able to figure out which it is. But this comes into being helpful later when we are considering lots of things about our bass lines and about soloing. The best way, I think, and it is a cliche, to make sure that you are having material for this is to really immerse yourself in this tune specifically. Really have a playlist that you are only listening to this tune until you get sick of it. And try to mimic what they're doing, especially the rhythms. When you are playing along, and play along with recordings that have bass players on them, it's totally fine. Play along with that. Try to catch some rhythms, try to integrate some of that rhythms, but most of this is going to come from dedicated listening over and over and over again. There isn't really a shortcut to that, but you get to listen, which is great. You also want to, of course, consider what other people did and the masters did in their playing of this tune. So that's why I recommended the Philadelphians, and there's the famous Miles version, and there's a famous, well, to bass player, the famous Paul Chambers version. The solo that I included for you is from it's from Chambers Music, I think. I'll put it up on the screen, which album it's from. So transcribe what you can of your own and try to study these solos and others that I've included. The Frank Rosolino one is from trombone, so it's in bass clef already. Some of it lays really well on the bass. Try to analyze it, finding out what the note choices are, but consider everything from its rhythmic perspective. I think a great example of this is the Paul Chambers solo. It's for his own album, and to analyze it analytically is a mess. I mean, I do not know what he was thinking in 60% of this, but it sounds great because it's Paul Chambers, and he has this sense of being able to make cogent and coherent statements that you want to listen to. You want to keep, you want to keep listening. They sound like they are starting somewhere and ending somewhere, right? So that's part of what makes a story too, right? There's the beginning, middle, and end. Freytag's pyramid thing, right? The climax at the top. Nonetheless, I hope that all of this is helpful for you, Vin, and that I think that combining all these things together and really being able to cut out some of the chaff at the beginning so that you can understand the behind the scenes of what's going on with the tune is gonna help you feel more confident, and then that's gonna make you motivated to continue on with those next levels of including those tensions and so on. Thanks for watching. I'm glad that you were with me today. As always, look for links below for the PDF, and thank you for being here. Always remember, straight ahead and strive for tone.